quite prohibitive for young people or people with certain backgrounds or certain lifestyles to be able to attend and take part in those kind of discussions. So the very fact that we make UKREiiF more accessible, and more than happy to go into detail in how we do that a little bit further down this conversation, essentially means that more people can come and get involved, and they can speak truth to power, if that's the right way to put it. I'm Matt Christie. I'm the Director of External Relations and Content at UKREiiF. And basically, it's my job to put together the programme of activity and support the fringe activity that makes UKREiiF as exciting, as special as it is.
From Ackroyd Lowry, I'm Oliver Lowry.
And I'm John Ackroyd.
And this is Urban Forecast, the show where we talk to the people defining the future of our cities. We discuss their background, what drives them, and the insights they've learned along the way.
This is a podcast for anyone who's interested in how we live, work or play in the cities of the future, and what that means for the built environment today.
Matt, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm just going to quote your website, if that's all right. So, we have been disrupting the conference sector in the UK built environment for years, and disruption features highly on our agenda. I thought we would start there. So, UKREiiF, 2 years in, it's been a great success. What do you think the nature of disruption that has made such a success of this event?
I think it's the nature of the fact that the attendees come from far and wide and from all different backgrounds. And what that means is people who, let's face it, in the property and construction sector can sometimes be accused of maybe navel gazing or looking very inwards and discussing with each other. More often than not, for an event of the magnitude of UKREiiF, it's quite prohibitive, not UKREiiF itself, but it's quite prohibitive for young people or people with certain backgrounds or certain lifestyles to be able to attend and take part in those kind of discussions. So the very fact that we make UKREiiF more accessible, and more than happy to go into detail in how we do that a little bit further down this conversation, essentially means that more people can come and get involved, and they can speak truth to power, if that's the right way to put it. A little statistic to give you, we actually gave away over 800 tickets to under 25s this year. And they were all pre-qualified under 25s. This wasn't us going and papering free tickets to make the place busy. This was us, through a strategy, engaging with businesses within the built environment and saying, bring your young people, bring your hard-to-reach people along so that they can sit opposite decision makers in the built environment, decision makers in government, tell them what they are thinking and ask them questions, and most importantly, make them think for when they're making decisions in the future. And that's how we really like to disrupt. And we've done many other things to make sure the event is of a disruptive nature. And, that includes, working with pressure groups within the industry and lobby groups who want to come along and, maybe talk about rail and road, right the way through to, the diversity element, which is engaging with, women in property and the Black professionals in construction, and making sure that it is a space that isn't fueled by the usual suspects, if that's the right way to put it politically correctly.
The MIPIM lads.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to comment on other people's events, but I certainly think that at other events, not a great deal is done to enable accessibility. One of the key pillars of our event is enabling accessibility. And look, we'll hold our hands up and say we haven't nailed it yet. We don't have the secret sauce, but some of the moves that we are making, and also the location of the event, and through engaging with people like yourselves who have a voice and can communicate to large audiences, we can hopefully get the story across that everyone is welcome. And it's not just about submitting a business development proposal to your line manager, to be able to afford to come and get a ticket to come along. So, yeah.
Well, I think, having gone this year, I didn't go the first year, but I did feel that definite sort of energy about the place. And I think that now understanding this intentional intent to sort of disrupt, I think it makes sense when you're there and you can kind of feel that. So take me back to the inception of UKREiiF, given that it's only 2 years old. I mean, the sort of BEN, I think, has created UKREiiF, and that's been going for much longer. So talk to me about how UKREiiF came into existence and what its kind of founding principles were.
The founder and CEO, Keith, and his wife, Amanda, started Built Environment Networking. I think it was in 2011, 2012. If they watch this, they'll probably reprimand me if I've got that wrong, but that's by the by. And the whole purpose was facilitating, a space where developers and investors or local authorities at that point could turn up in Leeds, Manchester or wherever, London, and launch their regen projects. And the audience was mainly people who could, come along to win work from those projects. So it was a really good conduit into the sector. Obviously, the big turning point for the events industry, not just our company, was what happened in March 2020 with COVID. It caused a lot of disruption, to the status quo. People started going online to do the business development. The very fact that maybe 3 years ago, to do this podcast, me and you might have been had to sit across a table with a microphone at some point. So we went online pretty rapidly and managed to make a business model, work, where we were delivering 50, 60 webinars a month with the odd online conference, and we just changed how we work. So my chief executive was just kind of sat with us one day with the senior team and was like, look, I've got this vision that now is the time, coming out of COVID, where the industry is going to need more help than ever. People's businesses need restarting, towns and cities' economies are changing. You've got new sectors emerging like life sciences and technology and innovation. Most importantly, and more often than not, that means budgets being cut in councils. You couple that with the, and I make no bones about saying this, and I don't want to be, again, critical of any other events, but one of the prohibitive things of going to the world's leading event, which is obviously MIPIM, is the fact that the cost to go there. And I probably don't think it's as palatable now for people who are responsible for budgets on a local level to be seen, maybe on a yacht, sipping champagne, even if it's not sipping champagne, but sat with the sunglasses on in the south of France, doing business. Now, obviously, there's a platform for that, and that's not to say they shouldn't go there, because there are genuine global investors there. What they do is slightly different to us. They focus solely on, property deals or land deals. We deal with regen and economic growth. But what we did, essentially, the origins of the event, was we talked to a lot of our colleagues in the public sector and in the private sector. I'm talking about leadership at the big city councils, the combined authorities, and said, what if we were to put together something that allowed you to come and share your challenges with a wider, vaster group of stakeholders, ranging not just from, C-suite level budget holders, but to community interest groups, to people who have a stake in your towns and cities, like universities and NHS trusts. And I think, we've got to give a lot of props to certain local authority leadership, both elected and officer level. And, I don't mind naming some who really have helped us, like Deborah Cadman at Birmingham, Joanne Rowley at Manchester. You go to Tom Reardon at Leeds, Phil Graham at the GLA. Your viewers or listeners will be aware of all these kind of people, plus the people like Marvin Rees at Bristol and Tracy Grabin, the mayor of West Yorkshire, Jamie Driscoll, the mayor of North of Tyne. And basically, because they knew us through what we did for built environment networking and what we'd proven we could do, they kind of took a massive leap of faith and said, you know what, we'll support you. Now, support in year one wasn't necessarily about putting pound notes behind the event and, blowing big amounts of budget. But for us, the biggest thank you we can give is for people's time and advice. And it was because of that advice and that really collaborative kind of feel with some of these city leaders, we were able to bring people like Legal and General and Aviva on board early. And then we were able to go to the development market, to the big players there and the house builders. And then obviously the game changer was Lord Kerslake throwing his weight behind it. And, someone as respected and as credible and as helpful as Bob comes on board. He's not someone who just sits there and wants his name attached to something. He'll go out and do things to help. And it all just kind of snowballed from there. We've started planning, I think it was around November 2020, and then we delivered the first one, I think it was, 2022 May. So it was almost like an 18-month odyssey to get from this blank piece of paper to, and a lot of work, a lot of long hours, with a great team that we've got at Built Environment Networking, at UKREiiF, to get it to happen. So that's how it all came about. And I suppose we just wanted to capture the imagination, and that's what I believe we have done based on what happened in Leeds in May this year.
No, that's amazing. And it was hard to believe that it was only 2 years old this year. How's that growth looked across the 2 years?
So in year one, we had about 4,000 delegates, and we had about 80 or 90 exhibitors. We had roughly about 400 speakers across about 8 stages, and we were really happy with that. You can imagine that many people turning up to Leeds was great. And I think the impact, I think it generated about £1.5 million worth of social value and around £5 million over 3 days to the Leeds city economy. A lot of people sent scouting parties for year one, and that's understandable. And also we took a lot of feedback. We didn't get everything right, but what happened straight after that was, I suppose, the organic use of social media kicked in and people started talking to each other. All of a sudden, myself, Keith, Nathan Spencer, who's another one of my colleagues, Louise, Amanda, we started getting messages in our DMs on LinkedIn saying, can we have a meeting about this? We've just heard about it. What are you doing next year? And then we had like allies in the industry like posting saying, you need to speak to Matt, you need to speak to Keith, and people were just, our inboxes just kind of flooded. This year we did 7,500 people, which is almost double. We estimate there's a report coming out from our friends at ARUP in a couple of weeks' time in early July. I don't want to preempt that, but just from some back of the cigarette packet maths that we've done, we reckon about £11.5 million into the Leeds economy in 3 days, about £3.5 million social value generated. I think we raised about £450,000 for charity, for various different charities across the 3 days. We know that occupancy in Leeds city hotels was 100%. We had people staying in Wakefield. We had people staying in Huddersfield, Bradford, York. The most eclectic story, and I can tell it because I've given you permission to, Welsh Government stayed in Barnsley, and that was a decent contingent of them, and they were getting a training every day. We had close to 700 speakers across the city, which is just immense, and that's my team, and I'll give a big thank you to them who have sorted that out, and brought all these different people in. And I think if you also were to measure it on impact, we went from having the fantastic mayors and, some ministers speaking in year one. In year two, we had a live on-stage episode of The Rest is Politics with, Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell. We had Gary Neville. Lord Heseltine came and kind of did a My Life in Regeneration. Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, was there. Like, it just kind of ballooned. You've seen the statistics yourself, probably floating online. 48% of our speakers were identified as female. Around 18% identified as from a Black, Asian or minority ethnic background. And for the built environment, which identifies as having about 3% people who identify as Black, Asian, minority ethnic, to go times 6 on that time of representation just on speakers, was immense. And we're going to be very transparent and publish our facts in early July about who was there, so people can't question, what I'm saying now, because it'll be in black and white. We've seen since then the really interesting thing that's happened is we've had colleges and schools phoning us up at the office saying, next year can we bring a year group trip to UKREiiF? And that is immense, because UKREiiF is meant to be about the next 50 years.
Yeah.
And I'm 34 years old. We won't go into ages here, but in 50 years time, in 50 years time, it'll be these people who are emailing now about skills. They'll be about retirement age. So we've got to keep kind of bringing the next generation to the event. If we're having a conversation seriously about levelling up and about decarbonisation and cleaner, healthier, smarter cities, we can't do that, just one generation of people in the room. It's got to be
And also, you can't do it with just the monolithically, demographically similar people that tend to be in the property industry. And I think that's why, in our practice, we're kind of banging the drum about having to bring in the next generation from not the same, demographic as the current batch of architects that are predominantly white middle class males. It's great to hear that, you know, that's part of the agenda of UKREiiF, and I think you could really feel that. I think on that subject, I wonder if there's a possibility of doing shorter tickets, or, you know, like, because I certainly would love to bring up more of our team, but for maybe a shorter period of time. Is that something that you would consider? And also, we run a program with the schools in this local area, and I can imagine offering it to some of the pupils there who want to get into the sort of the property area would be fascinating. But I think probably 3 days would be a bit much for them.
We are constantly reviewing our ticketing policy, our pricing, and nothing's off the table for 2024. We've kind of got a page up at the moment where people can book early bird on, but
I think for businesses you should make it, because I can imagine what you don't want is the businesses not buying the expensive tickets. And I think if you're a business, you have to buy a 3-day pass. They can get your base revenue needs to come from businesses. But I think if you're an individual who is, you know, interested outside of their business, I reckon a 1-day ticket would offer, you'd just be able to really open it up to like a different, well, like I'm saying, the next generation, and people that aren't going to be able to get their bosses to sign it off.
Yeah, I mean, it's not off the table, and we welcome any feedback like this. And this is something obviously that I will take back to the team. And you're not the first person to ask that, you know, that question. And similarly, we're not adverse to making arrangements, you know, with organisations that share our values. You know, we probably wouldn't just sell day passes for anyone to turn up at. But if you are contributing to the greater good of the event, the idea of you bringing, you know, the next generation, young people along, you know, that doesn't necessarily have to be a 100% commercial discussion to buy 3-day tickets and hotels, you know. And I think that's one of the unique elements of our business, by the way, the fact that we are, despite doing quite well as a business, and make no bones about that, we are still got a lot of family values attached to it. We're not a big corporate. You'd be surprised at the amount of people that work within our team. We are the sort of organisation where you can get to the chief executive with an email and he's happy to have a chat. You can get to the directors like myself with an email, and we're happy to make concessions. And so, yeah, I mean, let's take it offline. And anyone else who's listening or watching this, who's interested or wants to talk a little bit about that, we're open to a discussion. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that offer. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people getting in contact. I'll make sure. Do you want your email to be put into the show notes?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a fake email. No, I'm not really. Yeah, I mean, you can absolutely.
This is going on LinkedIn, so presumably they could just LinkedIn message you.
Yeah, LinkedIn or put me an email. We will talk to anyone about anything. We are, like I say, we can't make UKREiiF evolve on our own. We might have some good ideas and we've got good advisors, but at the end of the day, you know, we can't talk to an echo chamber. We've got to constantly be changing it up, getting different voices, you know, involved. And just while we're on that, I think the work that Mott MacDonald did this year with their EDI and Youth Pavilion is industry leading. You know, I make no bones about saying that, and that's a shout out to Lisa and the team at Mott MacDonald, who actually took that approach very early on and engaged us. They weren't afraid to ask the difficult questions of us, and we were able to come to solutions. And their program of events was just absolutely immense. What we've got to do now is get some of those things that were discussed around young people, around hard to reach parts of society, by the people who are from those sectors of society. We need to get them out of that pavilion and onto the stages on discussions around levelling up, where we can have the Mayor of Greater Manchester sat next to, you know, a young person who has maybe come from care and is now training to be a surveyor and has a particular view about how cities should be shaped. And that's the next challenge for UKREiiF. And anyone listening or watching this can rest assured that's what my team are fully focused on at the minute in the office.
That's amazing. And it sounds so exciting and so aligned to, I mean, these are topics that come up. It's sort of, you know, every 2 weeks we do this podcast, and the people that I want to speak to are the people that are trying to change the built environment by opening the industry up to people that are not from the same background that has designed the current cities, because otherwise they're never going to change. So that's amazing to hear. How did Leeds get picked, and is Leeds always going to be the UKREiiF venue, or is it going to be a movable caravan event?
So this is one of the most popular questions, and questions that we've had ever since, so end of first year, and certainly since the end of the second year of the event. So the basic reason Leeds was picked was, number one, our office is in Leeds and we have a fantastic relationship with Leeds City Council and the West Yorkshire Combined Authority. And in terms of the amount of risk that, Keith and Amanda as owners of the business took on when setting this up, we've all seen what happened, to MIPIM UK and several other iterations of things like that, luckily MIPIM RX or Reed Midnidem or whoever it was were there to absorb those issues. We were a small business and we needed to make sure that the event was de-risked as possible for the first year, and that meant doing it on our doorstep. Would it have been there if it was inappropriate? No, it'd have been somewhere else. We did talk to other cities who were more than helpful, but I think what you cannot underestimate for an event where we're in Leeds, like as a city, which is our home, is the Armouries. We wanted it to be a destination event. We didn't want people to be able to kind of come, look around for an hour, then disappear back to the office the other side of London, for example, and not come back. If you come to the Armouries, even if you're from Leeds, you're 15 minutes out of the city, so you're going to be there for a proportionate amount of time, and you're probably going to enjoy the atmosphere. You're going to immerse yourself in the atmosphere a hell of a lot more. So we were able to meld that site to turn into almost like a festival feel, which I hope you felt when you were on there this year. And then there was obviously the logistical issues, such as when we're measuring things up and seeing if things will fit and how high the ceiling is. At the moment, it's 15 minutes drive from door to door to have those kind of meetings and discussions.
Yeah.
As for the future, we're committed to Leeds for 2024, and we've got some very exciting things in store that you will see on the socials probably from September onwards. And a lot of people are going, how the hell are you going to make it bigger? Like, well, trust me, there's things cooking at the moment. We've had some very exciting meetings in the last couple of weeks. Beyond that, I mean, who knows? This event is about levelling up. We love Leeds City Council and the team there. But ultimately, this is a personal opinion, not an opinion of UKREiiF as a board. Could this event move round? Absolutely, it could move round to different cities, but I suppose the prerequisite of any move would be a relationship as good as the one that we've got with Leeds.
Yeah.
And the second prerequisite is not a convention centre, that's kind of in the middle of nowhere, where all the rooms look the same and everyone's kind of traversing this indoor complex with samey food outlets, prefabricated walls put up for theatres.
So not the Excel Centre in London, that's what you're saying.
Well, I wouldn't want to comment on the quality of the Excel Centre, but I think you probably nailed it, that not the Excel Centre.
There's one pub near it that's terrible, and then it's like a sort of wasteland, and then the rest of London's quite far away. Yeah.
Well, you must have went out in Leeds on one or two of the nights that you were there, and you could feel the atmosphere, right?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I love Leeds as a city, so I've got no complaints if it stays there. I thought, it was fantastic, and I think what you managed to achieve, and it is, it is worth talking about MIPIM because it is. I went to both this year. I was very surprised when MIPIM came back after COVID. I was expecting that there would maybe be less blue suits. I was expecting that there might be better gender representation. I was expecting that there would be some effort, and I think there was some effort in terms of the panels. The panels were quite balanced, but then I think, as you say, just the sort of like there was nothing else to try and discourage the same old kind of blue suit brigade. And I think you're right, it's that proximity of the bars to the event mean that really it becomes just this kind of big boozy sort of, not massively professional, but it's still all the big investors globally go there, and therefore it's going to always have its magnetism. What you managed, I think, very successfully was to get the local authorities. And I think it is becoming increasingly difficult for the local authorities to send delegates to the south of France, whatever the look, whether it's just the, in the cost of living crisis, if they get their photograph taken on a beach in Cannes, it's not going to look fantastic for them. And you as you say, you worked with the local authorities to make sure that it was a place that they were very happy to back, and that, regeneration does require people to come together and get deals done. So you're now, I think, way ahead of MIPIM when it comes to local authority representation. I know that in London boroughs at MIPIM, there's about 8, and I think you've got about 20 something out of the 32. Sorry?
23.
23 out of 32, so that's pretty good. And that's, you know, I think the kind of the food chain, if the local authorities are going, then the developers are going to go, and then the consultants are going to go. So you absolutely nailed that. I think the next, you know, the challenge for you guys is to then get the kind of the global investors to recognize, who are from Hong Kong, to know that UKREiiF is the place if they're talking about the UK. But I think what, you know, the big thing about the growth from looking at it from the outside was that you managed to engineer FOMO. You know, you managed to get people go like, I have to go. And I know a lot of people, I don't know if you were tracking it, but a lot of people bought their tickets towards the end because everyone was talking about it this year. Everyone, it wasn't from last year to this year. It was from 2 months before where everyone started going, this year, forget MIP, it's UKREiiF. And so well done for making that FOMO. And it will continue, I'm sure, because now no one's going to want to miss it next year.
We're recording, and I know that it doesn't go out immediately, but we're recording this on 15th of June, right? And that's exactly a month after the eve of UKREiiF, and we've already got over 1,000 people signed up for next year. The FOMO, you know, is something that can only be created. That's not something that any business, unless you've got a budget of Nike or the people behind the Prime drink, you know, which I've never got my head around why kids were going. You know, that's not something that a corporate can create, and that can only be created by people having a positive interaction with either representatives of UKREiiF or with people who've been to UKREiiF, right? And you can reflect on MIP, you know, cards on the table. I went out to the south of France this year as well at the invite of a couple of our partners. I can totally see the appeal of that place, because you've said there's 20,000 people from around the world. In terms of international, well, we've been doing a bit of that in the background. So my colleague Nathan went out to Hong Kong with the DBT, who are one of our supporters. You might have seen Lord Johnson's effusive video that he put up about UKREiiF. And if not, I encourage people to go to the DBT YouTube page or to our YouTube page. Nathan went out there and met with about 50 Far East investors. And me, Nathan and Keith went out to the USA 2 weeks before UKREiiF, which kind of got some glances in the office when there was so much to do and we were heading, you know, to
swanning off.
But we went out there to meet the DBT in America, and we met hundreds of American investors and occupiers. And it was a bit too late to get them involved for 2023, but the conversations remain, and we are expecting more of them to attend, you know, next year. And we're doing a lot to support their attendance as well, not just, you know, to a lot of them, London and Birmingham they'd heard of, Leeds they'd heard of because of the football team, but they hadn't even thought about visiting or why they'd visit. But now they are seriously thinking about visiting, you know, the city.
Well, yeah, as your star rises, so Leeds United football teams falls.
Yeah, well, look, cards on the table. I took a great deal of pleasure in what happened to Leeds United. I support Middlesbrough, I'm looking forward to that game next season. And some of our very close friends are Leeds United fans. Have spent the last, you know, number of years lording it over me. So, you know, the chips are down now for them. But you know, seriously, it's a fantastic city, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
I moved there in 2007, you know, came to university in West Yorkshire. So I moved to West Yorkshire in 2007. I've never left. Like, and I can't understand why anyone doesn't. My whole friendship pool now are people who moved to West Yorkshire and haven't left, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a great place.
Amazing. So I just want to finish back onto your website. So, and I think it's something that we've talked about. So encouraging this equality, diversity, inclusion in the built environment, and particularly in events. Are there anything, because I think that, you know, as well as the profession itself being sort of, you know, tends towards exclusionary practices when it comes to sort of, you know, like selecting from the same batch. I think property events are particularly bad as well. It'd be interesting, as well as the things that you've mentioned, is there anything else that you're looking at doing in the future to make, you know, to overcome these two barriers? One, the property industry having a sort of low inclusion, and then secondly, events and property events. Are there any things that you're trying to do to kind of overcome the barriers, just in terms of the event side of it?
So obviously I'm speaking from the position of a white male, and therefore the best I can be is an ally and an advocate for underrepresented groups. What we have been doing a lot of, and we will do a lot of this summer, in fact, we're pretty much in London every other week, myself or Nathan or one of the team, and we're going to other cities as well, is we are going to the networking events for people who identify from a certain, background or certain minority. And the hope this year to engage them better is to give them kind of first look at the programme for UKREiiF before kind of anyone else sees it, and open up a nomination process for these organisations who are serious about EDI, not ones who are box ticking. These are serious organisations about EDI like yours, and go to these people and say, do you know anyone from an underrepresented group who could speak just as freely on this as an expert that's already known? And we've already got a bit of a database, but hopefully what my team are going to be doing is kind of compiling a list of people who maybe wouldn't have been thought of because, not through any sinister means, just wouldn't have been thought of, and ergo putting them onto the stage to raise their profile so that, and we make no bones about this, in fact, we take it as a compliment. If other event organisers see that these people have spoke at UKREiiF, which is the biggest regeneration forum probably in the UK now and challenging for one of the biggest in Europe, if these people have spoken at UKREiiF on a topic that is of national significance or sectoral significance, then bloody hell, we should be approaching them to come and speak at our events, or, even better, to speak in front of our classrooms of students, to speak at our industry awards. It is about being the first footing. We can't monopolise speakers, we don't want to, but what we can do is, we go back to the football analogy or any type of sports analogy, we could maybe give people their first break in the sector. And if we can do that for underrepresented groups and they can gain confidence, because, it's not always because we don't have underrepresented groups. Sometimes it's about their confidence, as well. And we've done a lot. We've got a great colleague, Phil, who has done an awful lot to do speaker training with these underrepresented groups and with people who are a little bit nervous about getting on stage. And that hopefully unlocks their confidence to be out there in the whole sector. So if UKREiiF can act as a catalyst, for underrepresented speakers who are unknown but are bloody brilliant and bloody knowledgeable at what they do, hopefully other people can go, well, we need to engage with that group. We need to engage with that person because our practices really need to improve. And, we are on a journey. We can't set internal targets. We'll never do all male panels. The whole target now is to never do all white persons panels, anymore. But ultimately, we've also got to balance that with the fact that we've got to get the best speakers for the best, the best jobs. And we don't want to start being accused either of positive discrimination, colour washing, disabled washing. So it's a real balance. But if we can give more people a platform, then in years to come, the speaker pool for the whole of the UK and the world will be bigger. And that can only benefit the sector, can't it? Because then, there's that saying my family always used to say to me, that if you can see it and touch it, you can be it.
Yeah.
And that's our internal kind of motto. Make people see it and then people can be it. And hopefully next year we can surpass anything that we've done this year with help of people like yourself as well. Picking up the phone and saying, there's this really brilliant speaker, I think you should have a word with him, have a chat with him. We'll find something for them to do at UKREiiF, hopefully.
Amazing. Well, look, I think that's a perfect point to end it. And definitely, we sponsored the Women in Architecture Fringe event, and it was really great debate. And I think there's some recommendations coming out of that. So I'm going to introduce you to the people that ran that event for them to give their feedback. The whole event was around what could be done in the event space to make events cater better for to get a better gender balance. So I will introduce you to the people that ran that, for them to dispense their feedback, and also for them to be speakers in next year's event and on the main stage, because it was such a fantastic event, and it needs a greater audience. Thank you, Matt, so much. Just worth saying that Matt has very kindly donated 2 tickets to next year's UKREiiF event, which will be able to be won through some engagement online with this podcast. So if you're interested in coming to this event, and you've listened to this podcast, then the instructions will be on the LinkedIn as to how you can put your name in the hat for tickets for next year. Matt, thank you so much for your time. Really kind, and really enjoyed speaking to you.
Yeah, let's do this live maybe next year at UKREiiF and get a few people involved and have a good chat. And maybe...
I'm glad you said that, because that's what I really wanted to say, but I was going to wait till we finished in case you
No,
said
no, look, let's have some accountability next year. Let's, get round the table. You bring your microphone. I'll sit there. I can take it on broad shoulders. Let's listen, at the event to what people are really saying live there and then.
Yeah, and ask the audience. That's a fantastic
idea. Let's do it. Yeah. 100%.
Oh, okay. I'm well up for that. That sounds amazing. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Matt. Cheers.
Cheers.
If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe and give us a review, ideally a 5-star one. And if you want to know more, please go to ackroydlowry.com or follow us on Twitter @ackroydlowry and Instagram with the same. This podcast supports Land Aid, the property industry charity that brings together the sector to deliver life-changing projects for young people who really need it. Visit www.landaid.org to find out how you can help end youth homelessness.